right. Good morning, everybody. I am Mike Cavanaugh, and it is the Halloween edition of Clever Conversations today. And I'm super excited to just learn that we've got Joel Birch, who's a fellow Green Bay Packer fan, that we just learned in the green room before we started Clever Conversations. But welcome, everybody, to Clever Conversations. Super excited that we've got Joel Birch, who is the founder and CEO of Path Crypto. Um, Joel, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here. Looking forward to
Yes.
talking shop.
Yeah. Why don't before we jump into our clever conversation, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of your personal background, your entrepreneurial journey, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And again, thanks for having me. My entrepreneurial journey, I think, looks a lot like many entrepreneurial journeys, which is a lot of failure, a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of dead ends and that sort of thing. But I've been an entrepreneur dating back to pretty much when I was in high school. So 2006, 2007, I was building, I was basically drop shipping stuff on eBay back then and building very early stage websites in the very early versions of HTML and CSS and just self-teaching myself front end web development and that sort of thing. And that kind of love of tinkering with technology and building websites and just trying to figure out ways to make money on the internet eventually over the course of about a decade of those many failures and bad ideas and all the kind of stuff that you go through, um, eventually the doors finally opened up for me to start Path, which we'll get into. But right before that, I spent about a half a decade at GrubHub. They hired me in the early stages to help lead their sales expansion efforts. They were pretty much a no-name startup, at least very small. Certainly on-demand food delivery hadn't even been invented yet. This is before Grubhub, Uber Eats, or DoorDash did any delivery. This was basically online ordering, and that was about it. And I was kind of charged with figuring out how to expand that service nationwide across 60,000 restaurants. I managed many teams. I built compensation plans and just kind of worked in operations and leadership. And what that did was it gave my scrappy entrepreneur self a little bit more structure and maturity inside of this actually scaling business. And after doing that for about 5 years, the best of both worlds kind of came together. My love for crypto, which we'll get into, opened up the opportunity to start a company in the digital asset space. And for the last 5 years, that's all I've been doing. So it's been a very crazy journey to get here, but um, certainly no shortage of stories for sure.
Yeah, love it. My first entrepreneurial journey started at Options Express, where Adam
Adam
DeWitt,
DeWitt,
who
yeah.
yeah, Adam, who's Grubhub's now I think chairman of the board. Um, it's been fun watching everybody from Options Express and what they've done. So very cool that you worked with Adam over at Grubhub.
That's right.
Why don't you hop in a little bit and tell us about Path, your current project and what the inspiration behind Path is.
Yeah, well, I started buying crypto while I worked at Grubhub, dating back to late 2015. Most of my friends at Grubhub were engineers and fellow nerds. I was like the nerdy tech guy in sales and operations, and so most of my friends were fellow tech people, and they got me onto Bitcoin pretty early. And after a couple of years of being very much a hobbyist and a novice and a hodler, the 2017 bull market came around, and what I learned then was that I didn't know nearly as much as I thought. I wasn't as smart as I thought. I wasn't as good at trading as I thought, but I had to learn all those lessons the hard way, like everyone who goes through their first crypto bull market. That was my first time buying something for a couple $1,000s and making $20,000 overnight, and then doing it over and over and over again, and feeling like you can't be stopped. But eventually the music does stop, and it eventually kind of all collapsed around me and everyone else who was full time in crypto back then when Bitcoin first hit $20,000 and Ethereum first kind of went on its run. I fumbled countless tens of millions of dollars along the process in terms of selling Ethereum at $8 and buying it at 12 and selling it at 15 and trying to be a day trader. And so learning all those lessons the hard way and the expensive way in the last bear market, so after that $20,000 Bitcoin run, of course, I thought that was a great time to quit my job because I was a genius. So I left Grubhub with really no plan, and like a true entrepreneur would, after dedicating a huge part of my career to that company. And what I quickly realized was that, at least for me, the problem that I was looking to solve was that crypto was confusing and complicated and time consuming. And even though I was able to, over time, kind of sink my teeth into the industry, and I personally thrived in that chaotic environment, most people don't. And so that kind of inspired me to build something that would just do it for people. I mean, that's really where it all started from. It's cool for me to buy these random internet coins and do well and try to be a day trader, but it's not cool for my sister or my dad or my grandparents or my cousins or my friends. And ultimately, I wanted to try to help solve that. So we did by starting a company called Stacked, which eventually became Path.
Very cool. Um, and I love your self-deprecation humility. Um, drilling down on lessons learned. Like what do you think is the most important lesson that you've learned on your, entrepreneurial journey?
That's a deep question for sure,
That is,
because
yeah,
as you
sorry.
can
And I know
imagine,
it's
no,
it's
it's fine. I
it's
mean,
early on a Thursday.
yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be learned over time. I think it depends on kind of where you're at in the journey. There's most of my entrepreneurial journey was spent just being a scrappy entrepreneur no one cared about. Now I'm at a part of my entrepreneurial journey where I have a board of directors and 40 people on my cap table, and you know, tens and tens of millions of dollars of venture funding raised. And so the lessons I'm learning now are very different than they were before. But I think one thing that's been consistent, just dating back all the way to when I was first building stuff, um, was the importance of being able to move very, very quickly on idea iteration and testing. So I think one thing a lot of good entrepreneurs get into is they get this idea and then they feel like they have to build that entire idea out before ever talking to a customer or even trying to sell their product. Again, there's a million lessons, but if I really could hone in on one thing, and this goes before Path. Keep in mind, I had 10 apps that I built before Path that no one ever cared about or looked at. And some of them I thought were pretty good ideas. Some of them I still think are good ideas. Um, and but what I would have learned if I didn't spend 9 months building apps, and instead I spent some of that time going out and talking to who I wanted to sell that app to, or going out and trying to sell a skinned down funnel for that app, or even just run ads against the idea for that app. I was running ads long before I was building apps. I was running ads on Google pay-per-click in 2007. Like I was back then, you could buy clicks for 10 cents and you could advertise anything you wanted. And Craigslist was a meaningful form of advertising back then. So like I've been running ads since I could walk essentially on the internet. And so why didn't I spend most of my time testing out ads and things like that on all of my bad ideas before Stacked and Path? I don't know. I really just sunk my teeth into trying to build and solve this problem, and then you'd spend 6, 7, 8 months working on something, and then you try to take it to market, and not only are you burnt out, but then you realize people don't want it, and things change quickly. So I think iterating on ideas quickly to try to flush out whether it's a good or a bad one, and even if it's a good idea, it doesn't make it a good business. So that's another kind of important caveat there is, a good idea and a good business are two different things. And I learned some of those lessons the hard way for sure.
That's awesome. Like, and it's really important, like especially when you're the CEO of a startup, like you mentioned, that's funded. You get ideas. It's just how do you iterate on the right ideas, and testing it to the market is
Right.
super important.
And delegation.
Um,
Being able to
yeah,
trust other people to run with stuff, especially at this scale that Path is at. I have no shortage of ideas. Talk to my COO or my chief product officer. They will tell you I'm pretty annoying in that regard. There's very few meetings that go by where I'm like, hey, what about this? And I'm like a golden retriever chasing a ball. So
stay
and so having
focused.
yeah, so
Stay
having the right
focused.
people around you who can kind of parse through that, filter through it, take the best stuff out, that's all important too, like having a good team. So.
Yeah. Um, Tell us a fun or interesting fact about you, something that our listeners would love to know about you.
Well, I was struck by lightning when I was 11 years old, so that's usually my go-to fun fact.
That's
It was
awesome.
it was pretty terrible at the time. I definitely almost died. I was camping. I was standing under a tree in a thunderstorm. My dad saw it happen. 50 other people saw it happen. Spent some time in the hospital, but ultimately the tree that was the what attracted the lightning also saved my life. So it was a traumatic time. I was in the newspaper though, and when I went back to school after summer break, it was definitely the best story to bring back in terms of show and tell. And that's usually the fun fact I go to. That or the fact that I was born in England. But that usually opens up questions like, where's your accent and all the stuff that makes me sad. Because obviously, if I had a British accent, I would be a lot more credible. So I
Yeah,
usually stick with the lightning example.
that's insane. Um, Camping. How old were you when you got struck by lightning?
I was 11.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a little kid.
Um, that's insane. Um, so Path, you mentioned earlier, it started out as Stacked. You've been around for a couple of years. You are an SEC registered investment advisor, working on like the future of crypto investing. Maybe you could explain or elaborate a little bit on how important um, like relationships, trust, collaboration within the space are to you and Path.
It's probably our strongest. It's our biggest strength is our network and our relationships, and that's something that venture capital can't buy. It's something that VCs can't buy. Something that entrepreneurs can't buy. It's something that takes time, and crypto in particular is such a I wouldn't say tight knit community. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of camps, but it is a community nonetheless, and it's not one that's super welcoming to outsiders or people with new ideas. Like one of the things one of our biggest strengths is that we're not Johnny come latelys. I've been buying this crap since 2015. That's 8 years in crypto, which is 80 years in the real world. But I've also been working full time relying only on myself for a paycheck since 2017, since late 2017, early 2018. So that community and the friends that I've kind of built, that comes from going to 150 conferences over the course of 5 years. It comes, from doing 100 podcasts for friends and whatever the case may be. It comes from just really living and breathing it every single day. And if you're a tourist here, as we would call a lot of people who show up every bull market, it is typically a little bit more difficult to get some of the community support around your product, and community support around your product is certainly what's going to help it grow. It's what helped build Stacked to doing $1 billion a month in volume and a nine-figure business. Before we transitioned over to Path was really built on the community, friends and friends of friends signing up or having friends sign up during a bull market. And I did the vast majority of my building last bear market, 2019, 2020. I did the vast majority of my podcasts and YouTube grinding and conference going last bear market, and that has been true also for this bear market over the last 18 months. The vast majority of the work done and the community building and the friendship building and the trust building is actually done during those downtimes. It's the conversations I'm having now. And then when the next kind of market cycle rolls around, that's when you can kind of squeeze the juice out of it. And you usually only get 6 months of an up market cycle in crypto, and then you're back to another 18 months of crap. So being well positioned to take advantage of that 6 month run up, um, and the 6 months of kind of run up that lead before the 6 month run up, before the retail gets here, that's the most important. That's when you have to be heads down and like building those relationships and here for all the right reasons.
That's awesome. Um, so partnerships, trust, relationships. How do our listeners, how do our like regiment's ecosystem, how do we help you collaborate for future plans at Path?
So Pat's, as you mentioned, is an SEC registered robo-advisor. We're currently the only native app in the App Store that I know that is a wallet, crypto wallet for retail investors, non-accredited in the US, in the United States, that is built on qualified custody. So you can go download any crypto wallet, you can go download any exchange, but for every single one of those services, your assets, if you read the terms of service of that service provider, are either self-custodied by you and you have to worry about the private keys and everything else, or they're custodied by a third party and commingled with everyone else. Path is the only provider currently that is available to the retail at that level that keeps funds in segregated qualified custody. And I make all that known because your listeners and the regiment team and everyone in this kind of ecosystem I know can appreciate, um, especially in light of FTX, Voyager, Celsius, BlockFi, the list goes on, can
Yeah, it's a
appreciate
big
this,
list.
can appreciate this this new approach to asset management in crypto. We don't require new regulations. We worked inside the existing regulations of qualified custody and fiduciary responsibility as an advisor, as an SEC registered firm. And so you can appreciate the peace of mind that might come with working with a service like ours. And so, how anyone can be helpful is, if you have, I like to say, friends don't let friends hold their money on a crypto exchange. If you're not a trader, if you're not looking to be in and out of assets all the time, then that money should not just be sitting idle on a crypto exchange. No matter how good of a crypto exchange it might be, there's no reason not to hold that money in qualified custody overseen by a fiduciary. And so you should send your friends to Path. You should use Path yourself for your non-trading activities. You can trade on Path. It's not a day trading platform. It's not what it's for. So, um, anyone or any firm or any people that are looking for just long-term passive crypto investing that also has that kind of regulatory layer over it, should go to and use Path for sure.
Awesome. Joel, thank you so much for coming on today. Um, very excited to watch you and Path grow into the future. And any one last nugget or tidbit you want to leave the listeners with as far as what you see coming in the future?
Yeah, I think you just have to have conviction. If you're investing in crypto, if we're just putting it under the guise of crypto, I mean, I know Regimen isn't exclusive to just digital assets, securities, or the digital asset space, even. Investing has a lot of moving parts in the future. And as you move forward, you're only going to see more and more cool opportunities to invest in alternative assets, wine or art or NFTs or whatever the case may be. And with any of these alternative assets, crypto being the biggest alternative asset class right now, um, you have to have conviction because the one thing that exists here that doesn't exist anywhere else is extreme volatility. And that extreme volatility with no conviction will turn you into a wannabe day trader. And if you're a wannabe day trader, you will lose your money. You will hand it over to the folks who are actually good at it. And so conviction is what kind of pushes you through that. Investing only what you can afford to invest and ultimately take a large drawdown on or lose altogether. And having conviction is super important. So my tidbit would be don't hold your crypto that you're not trading on a crypto exchange and have conviction in what you're doing or what you're investing in. And if you have no freaking clue what coins to buy or what to do, then again, you can download Path and our investment team will put you into a portfolio based on your risk score and they'll manage it for you. And all you got to do is log in and check your balance. So yeah, conviction for sure is most important for crypto. Of
Love it. All right, Joel. Happy Halloween. Thank you
You
so
too.
much for spending some time with us today. And
Course.
love what you guys are doing at Path. And see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, man.